Today's project is to improve on my vise. This is my vise, standard handle, but it's a real pain to have to, when you want to open it a lot, to have to make sure you get your hand in the right place. To always, it keeps falling, having to get it again. What I'd like to do is put a handle on one end of this. So my idea is this. We've got our shaft on one end. I'm going to put some thread and end up with a knob on it. On the other end, something like this, with a pin through it. And then a handle. So the pin means that the handle can swivel, so you can end up with a thing like this. When you're using it, and when not using it, it can just fall down straight. I think I'll make a completely new handle with this, and I'll use this stuff for the ends. It's just mild steel, but when I've finished it, I'm going to blue it with some gun blue. So this needs to be cut off, because in the past I've welded it on. First step is to lay the handle down so that it will fit in the hole in the vise. Because it's so long, I need a bit of end stock support. Mild steel doesn't lathe very nicely. It leaves the surface reasonably rough, but a little bit of sanding down does the job, and in no time at all I've got a nice smooth surface. The smoother I can get the surface, the better the gun blue will adhere to the metal. I did measure the diameter, but let's just double check anyway. Yes, that's a nice clearance fit. I'm putting an M10 thread on each end of the shaft. That way the little handle will be able to screw in on one end and the knob on the other. Using the end stock to get the thread started just enables me to get a nice straight cut on the thread. Okay, that's done for both ends, so that's the handle or the rod part done. Next step is to make the stub that the handle will pivot on. So I've got a bit of the bigger diameter steel, and I'm going to cut an M10 inside thread in this that the rod will screw into. With that done, now I'm going to just cut with the angle grinder a slot that the pivoting handle will be able to slide into. Now I'm cutting the handle that will fit into that stub. The handle will pivot on a 6mm pin, so I'm just drilling 6mm through this, and then I'll drill 6mm through the handle, and now give it a test fit. Round it off the edges so that it will pivot nicely, and this is a bit of scrap that I'm going to use. That looks good. I'm going to knurl the handle to make it a little bit more grippy. My little lathe struggles with the knurling tool on steel, so I've got the end stock for a bit more support. There's the knurling done. I can now part that off. Let's do a test fit. Got the little pivoting handle, the stub, the 6mm rod. Yep, that's going to pivot nicely. I've decided to just weld the pin on both sides. Looks a little bit neater than a nut and bolt or a threaded in bolt. So a few seconds with the TIG welder and Bob's your uncle. With the handle welded up, we can now just screw the rod into the end, if I can find it. There we go. And it looks like a thing of beauty. Alright, just have to do the knob on the other end. Drilling for an M10 thread on the end of the thicker steel. That will turn into the knob. Once I've done that thread, I can turn it round, screw it onto the rod itself, and then I can turn the ball. I've made a fairly rudimentary ball turner attachment. It's a bit basic, but it seems to work for what I need. As I said, I've got that stub screwed onto the shaft. That shaft that had the thread on both ends. And now that I've got it in the lathe, I can now start turning the end of it. Now with all the bits done, I can do a complete test fit. First the handle on one end of the shaft, slide it into the vise, and then screw on the little knob. Woohoo! It's a good one. The process of bluing the steel now that I've got it shiny is fairly straightforward. It's just a matter of painting it on. A bit difficult when you're trying to film as well. Here we go, 2 hands, it's always better. As I paint on that relatively clear liquid, it reacts with the steel and turns black. It's a miracle. And after the black has been on it for a few seconds, then you dump it in water to stop the reaction. Okay, once I've done all the bits, now they're a bit wet from the water, just want to dry it off with the heat gun so that it's nice and dry. And when it dries all dull and nasty looking. And you think, oh, this doesn't look real good. But wait. Grab a bit of steel wool and very lightly just polish it with steel wool, and it comes up all nice and shiny. Look at that. A thing of beauty. Now it only remains to do the final assembly. I'm just using blue Loctite on this, just so that they don't come undone on their own. Using Loctite means I'll be able to disassemble it in the future if I really need to, maybe to improve it a little, unlike the previous version that had to use the angle grinder. I'm already thinking that I needed a free pivoting tube over the top of that little handle to make it easier to wind, but oh well, maybe that'll be version 2. And yes, I know that the blue will scratch on that long shaft, but I was too tight to go and buy stainless steel for this job. Anyway, a few scratches just adds character. Right, let's give it a go. See what it feels like. Ooh, I like it. Much easier to turn. Well, that's another little job done.